It is an image of almost impossible perfection. A near-symmetrical cone rising 2,463 meters from the plains of Albay in the Philippines, its peak often wreathed in a delicate plume of white steam. For centuries, it has been called Bulkang Mayon, the beautiful maiden of Philippine geology. But on the morning of November 28, 2024, that sublime beauty was torn apart by a terrifying display of raw power. This wasn't just steam. This was something else entirely. This was an avalanche of death. We want to know what you think. Have you ever lived near an active volcano or felt the ground shake from its stirring? Tell us your experience in the comments below. Wait, a huge number of people who watch our documentaries absorb the information but forget one critical step. If you find this kind of deep dive reporting valuable, take just 1 second and hit that subscribe button. It's the single most important thing you can do to support our work and ensure you don't miss future alerts when they matter most. Now, let's begin. At 6:49 a.m. Philippine Standard Time, as the sun cast its first gentle rays over Legazpi City, the giant stirred. Without the deafening boom of a massive explosion, a section of the volcano's summit simply gave way. A monstrous, churning cloud of gray and black material detached from the peak and began to plummet down the southeastern slope. This was a pyroclastic density current, or PDC, the single deadliest hazard a volcano can produce. It wasn't flowing like lava. It was moving with the explosive speed of a hurricane. A blistering hot cloud of gas, ash, and rock fragments, superheated to temperatures that can exceed 700 degrees Celsius, hot enough to melt lead instantly. It hugged the ground, channeled by a deep scar on the volcano's flank known as the Basud Gully. For the residents below, it was a horrifyingly familiar sight, a nightmare scenario played out in real time. The cloud billowed and expanded, a terrestrial thunderhead moving faster than any vehicle could escape it. Onlookers and the scientists at the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, or PHIVOLCS, watched in stunned silence as the flow raced downwards. It didn't stop after 1 kilometer, or 2. It continued its relentless advance, scouring the gully, incinerating everything in its path, finally coming to rest a staggering 3.8 kilometers from the summit. That's over 2.3 miles. An unimaginable river of destruction that had breached the invisible lines of safety drawn around the mountain. The director of PHIVOLCS, Teresito June C. Bacakal, was quick to clarify the nature of the event. This signifies a major collapse event on the summit of Mayon Volcano, he stated. What happened this morning was not an explosion. It's the collapse of the dome that has been extruded since last year. This distinction is critical. This wasn't a throat-clearing cough from the volcano. It was a structural failure. For nearly a year, since its last period of heightened unrest in 2023, a dome of viscous, sticky lava had been growing in the summit crater, like a cork being slowly and unstably pushed out of a bottle. On November 28th, a piece of that unstable cork broke off. The danger is that this was not a one-time event. The dome is still there, still unstable, and more of it could collapse at any moment, without any of the typical warning signs of a classic explosive eruption. This incredible power is almost impossible to comprehend. If you could ask the scientists at PHIVOLCS one question right now, what would it be? Drop your question in the comments. The most thoughtful ones can shape our future videos. The 3.8 kilometer run out of the pyroclastic flow triggered immediate and decisive action. The imaginary line of absolute danger around Mayon is the 6 kilometer radius permanent danger zone, or PDZ. No one is supposed to live or even enter this area. But the flow had traveled a terrifying portion of that distance, and the authorities were taking no chances. In Legazpi City, Mayor Geraldine Rosal issued an immediate mandatory evacuation order for residents within the 7 and 8 kilometer extended danger zones on the southern flanks. This order targeted the barangays, or villages of Bonga, Mabinet, and Matanag. Suddenly, the lives of between 11,000 and 15,000 people were upended. Families who lived their entire lives in the shadow of the beautiful mountain, who farm its fertile soil and depend on its tourism, were once again forced to pack what they could, abandon their homes and their livelihoods, and flee. This is the brutal rhythm of life in Albay. The volcano gives, providing incredibly rich soil for crops like rice and abaca, but it also takes demanding attacks of vigilance, anxiety, and periodic displacement. Albay's governor, Edsel Greco Lagman, immediately placed the entire province under a blue alert status, a measure to ensure that all disaster response resources were mobilized and ready for a worst-case scenario. "We have to be on our toes," he stressed, noting that the long run out of the PDC was a grave sign. Better to be over-prepared than be sorry. If this story is impacting you, please hit the like button. It tells us we're covering what matters. And if you have family or friends who need to understand the real power of nature, share this video with them. It's more than just a shocking story. It's a lesson in survival and the importance of heeding warnings. For the scientists at the PHIVOLCS Lignon Hill Observatory, a small outpost with a commanding view of the volcano, this event was not a total surprise. It was the violent culmination of weeks of subtle but persistent warnings from the mountain. Mayon Volcano had been under alert level 2, signifying increased unrest since December 8, 2023. For almost a year, the volcano had been in a state of low-level agitation, a clear signal that shallow magmatic processes were underway. The data logs told a story of growing instability. In the 24 hours leading up to the major collapse, PHIVOLCS had already recorded 11 smaller pyroclastic density currents and 56 rockfall events. These were the mountain shedding its skin, small slides, and collapses from the unstable summit dome. Furthermore, the volcano was exhaling. Instruments designed to measure volcanic gases detected an average of 2,492 tons of sulfur dioxide, or SO2, emissions per day. To put that in perspective, that's like the weight of nearly 400 African elephants in toxic gas being released from the volcano's throat every single day. This is a key indicator for volcanologists. High SO2 emissions mean that fresh magma is relatively close to the surface, depressurizing and releasing its trapped gases. It is the volcano's breath, and it smelled of trouble. The team at Lignon Hill, led by on-site experts like research specialist Eugene Escobar, are the sentinels on the front line. They use a sophisticated array of tools to read the volcano's pulse. Seismometers buried in the ground detect the faintest tremors, the subtle hum of magma moving miles below. GPS stations and tilt meters measure microscopic changes in the ground surface, tracking as the volcano's belly swells or inflates with accumulating magma. Thermal cameras scan the summit day and night, looking for hot spots that could signal an impending breach. All this data flows into a continuous stream, painting a picture of the giant's mood. And for months, the picture had been one of simmering agitation. I know we mentioned it before, but I'm looking at our real-time analytics, and it's wild how many of you have been watching for several minutes but haven't subscribed. It's like watching a thriller and not wanting to know how it ends. If you've learned something new in the last few minutes, please, just click that button. It takes 1 second and is the fuel that allows us to make these deep dives. Okay, back to the science. The current situation is made even more menacing by Mayon's long and violent history. To understand the fear that grips the province of Albay, you must look back 2 centuries. On February 1st, 1814, Mayon produced its most devastating eruption in recorded history. It was a cataclysm of unimaginable scale. Unlike the recent dome collapse, this was a full-blown Plinian eruption, sending a column of ash and rock tens of thousands of feet into the sky. But the most lethal part was the pyroclastic flows that followed. They were larger, faster, and more voluminous than anything seen since. They swept down all sides of the volcano, completely burying the towns of Cagsawa, Budiao, and parts of Camalig, Guinobatan, and Daraga. It is estimated that over 2,200 people perished in a single day. The people of Cagsawa fled to their massive stone church, believing its thick walls would protect them. They were wrong. The pyroclastic flow was so immense it completely entombed the entire town, church and all, in meters of hot ash and rock. When the smoke cleared, the only thing left visible was the top of the church belfry, standing as a lone, silent tombstone over a buried community. Today, the Cagsawa ruins are a stark and iconic landmark. Tourists pose for pictures, with a beautiful cone of Mayon in the background, and the dark, lonely belfry in the foreground. It's a haunting juxtaposition of beauty and death, a permanent reminder for the people of Albay of the price of living so close to such a magnificent but merciless power. The ruins are now part of a park, and are on the tentative list to become a UNESCO World Heritage Site, a monument not just to a tragedy, but to the enduring spirit of a people who have learned to live with this constant threat. The 1814 disaster wasn't an isolated incident. Mayon's history is punctuated by death and destruction. In 1984, an unexpected eruption killed several climbers and researchers who had ventured too close, leading to much stricter access regulations. Eruptions in 2000-2006 forced the evacuations of tens of thousands. The most recent major event before now was in January 2018. That eruption was spectacular and terrifying, featuring dramatic lava fountaining that shot molten rock 600 meters into the air, and ash plumes that soared up to 10 kilometers, disrupting air travel. Over 75,000 people were forced into evacuation centers for weeks. The 2018 eruption was a classic magmatic event, driven by a powerful surge of gas-rich magma from deep within. This is what makes the current situation so concerning. The November 28th event was different. It was a gravity-driven collapse. It proves that Mayon has multiple ways to kill, some that come with the roar of an explosion, and others that come with the silent, sudden failure of its own unstable summit. This complex relationship between the people and the volcano is woven into the very fabric of the region's culture. The name Mayon itself comes from the Bicolano legend of Daragang Magayon, which means beautiful maiden. The legend tells of a lovely princess who fell in love with a brave warrior from a rival tribe, forbidden to marry. They tried to elope, but were pursued by her spurned suitor. In the ensuing battle, both lovers were tragically killed. According to the legend, the ground where they were buried began to rise, swelling day by day until it formed the perfect cone of the volcano. The clouds that often shroud the summit are said to be the spirit of her lover, kissing her, while the volcano's violent eruptions are the manifestation of her spurned suitor's rage. It is a story that perfectly encapsulates the duality of the volcano, a place of sublime love and beauty, but also of violent jealousy and destruction. This duality extends to the very soil. The land around Mayon is some of the most fertile in the Philippines, continuously enriched by minerals from weathered volcanic ash. This allows farmers to grow abundant crops, but it also forces them to live and work on the volcano's very slopes, in the direct path of danger. They are simultaneously blessed and cursed by the mountains. They are the first to benefit from its bounty, and the first to flee from its wrath. This cycle of building a life, being forced to abandon it, and then returning to rebuild has forged a unique resilience in the people of Albay. They are not careless. They are simply accustomed to a reality most of us can barely imagine. Okay, last time, I promise you. But please think of it this way. Subscribing to this channel is like joining our virtual watchtower. Every time a story like this breaks, or when a new scientific discovery changes our world, you'll be the first to get the real in-depth analysis. We've got so much more to uncover about our planet and its incredible forces. Don't get left behind on the next big story. Click subscribe now. So, the question that hangs in the humid air of Albay is the same one on the minds of volcanologists around the world. Is a bigger eruption coming? The answer is terrifyingly uncertain. PHIVOLCS has kept the volcano at alert level 2, meaning the threat of a major hazardous eruption has not yet become imminent. But the ingredients are all there. The significant pyroclastic flow from the dome collapse is a massive red flag. It shows the summit is fundamentally unstable. The continued high levels of sulfur dioxide gas prove that the magmatic system is active and pressurized. The ongoing rockfalls and smaller PDCs, like the one additional PDC in 24 rockfalls observed in the 24 hours after the main event, show that the mountain is still actively shedding material. There are several scenarios that could play out. More of the lava dome could collapse, producing even larger and more far-reaching pyroclastic flows without warning. The interaction of the hot magma near the surface with groundwater could trigger a sudden, violent, steam-driven explosion, known as a phreatic eruption. These can fire ballistic projectiles, chunks of rock the size of cars, miles from the summit. Or, this could all be the prelude to a full-blown magmatic eruption, similar to or even larger than what was seen in 2018 with towering ash columns and sustained lava fountaining. As Eugene Escobar of the Lignon Hill Observatory stated unequivocally, the threat of a hazardous eruption is still there. That's why the 6-kilometer permanent danger zone